Chapter 61. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Unable to use attack abilities. Basically, Jia Yingchuan's only attack is a weak punch. Not ideal. But her bloodline's second attribute suddenly made her invaluable. As long as Jia Yingchuan is around, the skill level of everyone in the territory gets a +2 boost, think about that. The higher the level, the more insane this buff becomes. Her talent is strong, too. She has 10 points of luck, plus the Jinling 12 Beauties bond gives her another 2, that's a total of 12 luck points. Is she a walking buff machine? Wu Qi was floored. This new legendary hero lives up to the hype, even if she can't fight, her talent and bloodline alone make her OP. Overall, she might even be more important than Qin Keqing and Lin Daiyu. Good fortune brings peace and prosperity. I am seriously lucky. Is that why I got 2 gold coins right off the bat? Summon Jia Yingchuan, then bam. Another gold legend. Jackpot, Wu Qi thought, feeling a surge of excitement. Hello, Jia Yingchuan, no upgrades are needed to get the most out of her. Just her being alive and in the territory gives everyone a powerful buff. In a dream of red mansions, Jia Yingchuan's a tragic character, because she's the child of a concubine, even being the second daughter, she doesn't have high standing in the Jia family. Even the maids and old women steal her stuff and sell it, she becomes incredibly timid, never fights back, just accepts it. Finally, to pay off gambling debts, her father marries her off to this creep, Sun Shaozu, she dies from the abuse, that's where the saying raise a wolf, and it'll bite you comes from, but destiny changed. Before the wedding, while crying alone in her room, Wu Qi summoned her to the endless void. She escaped her world, escaped the misery, and became a golden legendary. Hero. Dream? Or real? Jia Yingchuan's eyes were full of fear and confusion. She's afraid it's just a dream, and confused about facing a new world. Dazed, someone seemed to be calling her. Jia Yingchuan opened her eyes, saw Wu Qi, and smelled the woody fragrance in the red building. Not a dream. Welcome to the Spring Festival. I'll show you around. Wu Qi was a little unsure, as he was about to say more, he saw the delicate beauty's face wrinkle, and tears as big as peas fell from her eyes, crying. Wu Qi was confused. He didn't do anything, did he? Sister Yingchuan. Lin Daiyu was thoughtful and subtly signaled to Wu Qi. Then, she pursed her lips. Seeing this, Wu Qi understood and went over to hold the little beauty's hand, wrapping his arm around her soft waist. Master. Jia Yingchuan cried and laughed, clutching Wu Qi's clothes. She was sobbing. No one understands her 20+ years of frustration and pain. Even the maids in the Jia family looked down on her. Okay. Wu Qi patted her back, holding her close. After a while, Jia Yingchuan finally stopped crying. She looked up with tears in her eyes and said hoarsely, I'm sorry, Master. Yingchuan is being rude. It's okay. Wu Qi chuckled. Jia Yingchuan is naturally gorgeous, with a soft, frail look that makes you want to protect her. The young master is holding a beauty in his arms, enjoying himself. How could he be angry? Lin Daiyu smiled. Hearing this, Jia Yingchuan pulled away, clasping her hands together, her pretty face red. By the way, what can Sister Yingchuan do? Lin Daiyu pursed her lips and smiled, turning serious. The monster invasion hasn't started yet. With Sister Yingchuan here, we should be more relaxed. Jia Yingchuan pursed her lips and frowned. Let me tell you. Wu Qi explained Jia Yingchuan's attributes. Lin Daiyu's eyes lit up, her pretty face tilted, and she said softly, this is perfect for Sister Yingchuan. Even though she can't fight, just her presence gives us a huge boost. Yep, and she's a good luck charm. From now on, you're in charge of all the loot boxes. Wu Qi winked. For a moment, Jia Yingchuan felt flattered, glanced at Wu Qi, and felt a touch of joy. This feeling of being valued. Is this it? Okay, Daiyu, show Yingchuan the territory. Wu Qi ordered. Lin Daiyu happily took Jia Yingchuan's hand and walked away. Wu Qi wasted no time and turned to find Qin Keqing. Qin Keqing was in the Union guesthouse kitchen, figuring out what to cook. She wasn't a chef, her cooking skills were only a so-so, but to make good food for everyone, she studied cooking every day. Salt, vinegar, MSG. MSG is bad, broth is better. Let's go with broth. But making broth requires. She looked at the seasonings on the table, her beautiful face thoughtful. Suddenly, she heard footsteps, turned, and saw Wu Qi walking in. Master, Qin Keqing quickly bowed. Keqing Tan, Wu Qi looked curiously and said, "What are you doing?" "I'm preparing dinner." Qin Keqing's face was flushed, and her voice was quiet. "It's early for dinner, isn't it?" Wu Qi was stunned, then he realized and felt helpless. "It's just food. We can hire cooks later. You don't have to stress." "Okay." Qin Keqing's face turned redder, and she wanted to disappear. Chapter 4 War Fortress. Technological Monster. "Master, did you want to talk to Keqing about something?" Qin Keqing was so embarrassed she changed the subject. She looked at Wu Qi charmingly. Chapter 62. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. The latter was so stoked, he pulled out the image of Destiny and handed it over. Qin Keqing was surprised. She took the Destiny hanging painting, glanced at it, and exclaimed, "Is this mine?" "Yup. Go for it." Wu Qi confirmed with a nod. Without hesitation, Qin Keqing channeled the image of Destiny. In a flash, it turned into a beam of light and surged into her. Moment later, light shimmered all over her, eventually swirling around her in clouds of mist. After a few seconds, she opened her eyes, beaming. "Wow, you're way stronger now." "Totally." Wu Qi confirmed, checking her stats. Qin Keqing, truncated, level, 7. Physique, 620 plus 50, base, 60, multiplier, 1000%. Equipment, 50, bond, 20, spirit, 620 plus 240, base, 60, multiplier, 1000%. Equipment, 240, bond, 20, her stats had skyrocketed. Both her base stats and stat growth had gotten a huge boost. Unlike Lin Daiyu, Qin Keqing saw improvements across the board. Lin Daiyu was all about raw power, while Qin Keqing's physical and mental capabilities had both received massive buffs. 540, it seems like a waste to just have her slinging spells, that Wu Qi mused about the future. Maybe I can find her an Immortal Cultivator job transfer certificate after level 10. Switching hero classes wasn't unusual. He'd looted tons of them in the past 3 weeks, but they were just collecting dust in the small universe. For now, he thought about the almost ethereal vibe Qin Keqing gave off when she unleashed the 6-ding heavenly thunder. Yeah, this could really work. Oh, I recruited another hero. You know her, Wu Qi suddenly remembered. Qin Keqing, still getting used to her newfound power, asked, someone from the Ning Rong mansion. Maybe the second miss. Jia Ying-chun. Wu Qi replied. Qin Keqing pondered this for a moment, then whispered, "Ah, the second miss. It's probably a good thing you summoned her, young master, given her personality." Qin Keqing knew Jia Ying-chun, and while they weren't exactly besties, they certainly knew each other. True. Wu Qi said with a smile. He was sure that any of the girls from A Dream of Red Mansions would be living their best lives in his territory. After all, they would go from being mere mortals to powerful heroes, escaping their original, often painful fates. What could be better? He filled Qin Keqing in on Jia Yingchuan's stats. Qin Keqing was impressed and tried channeling some lightning, finding it significantly more potent. While they were chatting, Wu Qi seized the opportunity to hug her. Boom! The ground shook, a piercing whistle echoed from outside, then abruptly stopped. Monster invasion incoming. Wu Qi's eyes sharpened. He grabbed Qin Keqing's hand and dashed outside. They quickly reached the stone wall. By now, the territory spanned about 8,000 square meters, and the Thundercloud enchantment stone wall had been upgraded to level 8. The 23 defense towers had also reached level 8, packing enough firepower to light up the sky for miles. But why had the noise stopped so suddenly this time? Wu Qi flagged down a great Qin warrior to ask. The warrior bowed respectfully and explained, "Your Majesty, we shot down some sort of mechanical flying eagle. It's over there. Huh. Wu Qi followed his gaze and saw, a plane. Bring it here. I want to take a look. Wu Qi ordered. Two great Qin warriors nodded and leaped down, sprinting to the downed aircraft. They hefted the plane, weighing at least a dozen tons, and with one smooth motion, carried it back to the stone wall, *thump, star. They set the plane down, their breathing steady, showing no signs of strain. Wu Qi approached, his expression turning quizzical. It looked like a highly advanced drone. Generally, these types of drones were used for reconnaissance. Which meant, are the monsters invading today using advanced technology? Wu Qi asked himself. He took a deep breath and stared into the fog-shrouded distance, sensing the gravity of the situation for both the king and Xuanhuan. The great Qin warriors and the Mingyue ladies braced themselves. Every face was grim, ready for a fight. Soon, the fog began to dissipate. Figures emerged, one by one. There were humans wearing thick gray exoskeleton armor, mobile mechanical fortresses armed with cold, deadly guns, and weapon-laden drones buzzing overhead. Identification technique. Wu Qi muttered, narrowing his eyes. Exoskeleton armored soldier, race, human/void, level, 15. Constitution, 50. Spirit, 50. Armor, 300/300. Skills, exoskeleton armor, broken sword, corrupted machine gun. Description, a space warrior who fought among the stars, before the world ended. Elite exoskeleton armored soldier. Truncated. Mobile war fortress, race, human/void, level, 15. Armor, 2000/2000. Skills, multi-alloy armor, concussion shield, guided missile, SG-75 rocket. Description, once a war machine, now only dead air remains. Elite mobile war fortress. Truncated. J-73 combat drone, race, artificial machinery/void, level, 15. Chapter 63. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Armor, 100 out of 100. Skills, radar detection, small missile defense, anti-air artillery. Introduction, ever wanted to swat a swarm of bees? Elite J-73 combat UAV. Slight damage. The endless void has swallowed countless worlds and universes, so, finding a scientifically advanced world or universe isn't exactly shocking. Still, this is Wu Qi's first time battling a tech-based enemy, and he's feeling a little uneasy. So, they're mainly relying on armor. Their stats are way lower than the monsters we've faced, but that armor and those weapons are something else. That Wu Qi watched the defense towers prep their attack, then, they unleashed hell. Since the upgrade, the tower's skills have gotten a serious boost. This time, the Pyroblast Tower, Lightning Tower, and Crossbow Tower took the lead. Flames, chain lightning, and armor-piercing bolts tore through the air. The enemy soldiers ducked back, while the war fortress lumbered forward to take the hit. Boom. Crack. Whiz. The explosions rocked the area. When the smoke cleared, the war fortress was still standing, sporting only a superheated pit. Bzzz. That the war fortress kept advancing. The exoskeleton soldiers worked together, slowly pushing forward behind their metal shield. This is like tank infantry tactics, except the tanks are war fortresses. That Wu Qi's face tightened. He frowned. He needed to figure out how to break their line. Chapter 5, The Unexpected Power of the Immortal Binding Seal, May 10th. Please subscribe. The war had begun. As the enemy moved into firing range, the defense towers threw everything they had at them. Elemental magic, high-speed miniguns, penetrating bolts, magic attacks finally broke through one war fortress, wiping out the soldiers inside, but the physical attacks, like crossbow bolts and bullets, barely scratched the armor. The enemy was slowly but surely closing in on the territory walls. Just then, Lin Daiyu and Jia Yingchun arrived, standing next to Wu Qi. Jia Yingchun stared, wide-eyed with shock. She'd never seen anything like this before. It was terrifying, her eyes full of fear. New enemy. Lin Daiyu's face was calm. She was used to fighting by now, and wasn't afraid of a new challenge. Instead, she was already thinking about how to win. The control towers joined the fray. ground vines, stink bombs, land mines, ground spikes, even the earthquake tower cut loose, the earth shook, vines erupted from the ground, and landmines popped into existence, but the effect was underwhelming. Aside from the stink bomb tower, the control towers were basically useless. That armor is too damn thick, that Wu Qi's face tightened. He racked his brain as he watched the enemy army slowly advance through the green fog. The advantage of tech armor was its insane physical resistance, but it had weaknesses, too. For example, it drained energy fast. And the soldiers inside the fortresses and exosuits were squishy. Want me to go mix it up? Lin Dayu asked, gazing at Wu Qi with her beautiful eyes. He was taken aback, but nodded. Alright, be careful. Don't worry. Lin Dayu smiled, glanced at Jia Yingchen, and jumped. At level 7, her stats were off the charts. Add in some gold gear, and she was a force to be reckoned with. Wu Qi watched her, feeling a warmth in his heart. Sister Lin wasn't going in for a mindless slaughter. She was holding back, testing different attack methods. She leaped hundreds of feet in the air and punched a 10-meter-tall war fortress. The alloy armor shattered, killing the soldiers inside. She used Shadow Sword to slice through the wreckage but still couldn't take out the fortress. Then she tried Swallow the Weather, a passive skill that dealt true damage, which was pretty effective. It was clear, Sister Lin changed her plans to help Wu Qi brainstorm. She was going out there to give him ideas. After studying the wreckage of the war fortress, Wu Qi's eyes lit up. The Immortal Binding Seal. Up until now, since there were only a few Mingyue Palace maids and tons of monsters, they usually saved the Binding Immortal Seal for bosses, but that didn't mean the skill was weak. On the contrary, it was incredibly useful. Even bosses could be restrained if they were hit with enough Immortal Binding Seals. The war fortress was like a turtle shell, slow, but with crazy thick armor, a straight-up fight. They could exhaust the defense tower's entire arsenal and still not stop the enemy. But the war fortress wasn't just a solid chunk of metal. It was a bunch of precision instruments cobbled together. Tech always had a core. Mess with that, and the whole thing fell apart. When Dayu gets back, thank her for me. Wu Qi patted Jia Yingchen on the shoulder and ran towards Lady Mingyue. Huh? Jia Yingchen was confused. She didn't know what was going on. After thinking for a moment, she looked down curiously. In her eyes, Lin Dayu was tearing through the enemy ranks, effortlessly destroying war fortresses and exosuits. Amazing. I wish I could fight with Sister Dayu. Fire. The girls looked grim, their small bodies pressed against the stone wall, holding precious mirrors. They launched angry moon seals, hitting the drones in the sky. Beside them, the great Qin warriors and Qin archers helped destroy even more drones. The drones returned fire, unleashing small missiles and artillery that chipped away at the wall's durability. However, once the thundercloud technique kicked in, lightning struck, making the drones' losses even worse. A swarm of drones flew in, but soon a large chunk of them were missing. This fight was intense. Chapter 64. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Just then, Wu Qi rushed over, yelling, "Hold up, everyone! Huh? An immortal? An immortal is here." The girls, taken by surprise, stopped what they were doing and stared. Wu Qi took a deep breath, then gestured towards the war fortresses, whispering instructions. These girls were handpicked for Mingyue Palace's Immortal Cultivation program, so they were naturally quick studies. Before long, they caught on to Wu Qi's plan. Nodding in unison, they began chanting spells. 2 immortal binding seals materialized, morphing into shimmering white immortal binding ropes that snaked longer and longer. Honestly, 200 immortal ropes wouldn't make a dent against that many enemies, but they weren't aiming for the exosuit soldiers. Their target was the war fortresses themselves. The war fortresses immediately threw up their protective shields, layering defenses to block the attack, but the immortal binding seal wasn't an offensive spell. The shimmering ropes snaked past the shields and under the war fortresses. They lassoed the movable gates shut. Clang! With a deafening crash, the war fortresses shuddered violently and toppled over, turning into sitting ducks. That's it. Wu Qi grinned. The war fortresses relied on their undercarriage for movement, and the movable gate was the linchpin of that machinery. With the gate jammed shut, the war fortresses were dead in the water. Now, let them have it. Wu Qi commanded. The great Qin warriors vaulted down and engaged the exosuit soldiers in close combat. As soon as they fell into formation, the exosuit soldiers, cut off from their war fortress support, were easy pickings. Swords flashed, intercepting missiles, armor shrugged off rockets, skin stopped bullets. It was a surreal battlefield. Meanwhile, the girls continued their assault on the hobbled war fortresses, turning each into a stationary target. Then, unleashing everything they had, they pummeled them with flame judgment and other advanced spells. Over half an hour later, the enemy army was nearly annihilated. Finally, the Day 21 boss revealed itself. A mechanical behemoth, a chariot towering over 60 feet tall. From a distance of thousands of yards, the mechanical chariot's carriage raised up, revealing a missile launcher. Chapter 6, One trick is all it takes. 6 out of 10. Please subscribe. The mechanical chariot was over 60 feet tall and 200 feet long. Just one look told you it meant business. Especially now, kilometers from the territory. If the battle hadn't been so deafening and the lights so bright, Wu Qi might have missed it. And now, the mechanical chariot was raising its carriage. That meant missiles. Suddenly, a white missile materialized on the launcher. No way, missiles. And amped-up void missiles at that. That Wu Qi winced. He knew that when they finally descended into the endless void, they'd be going toe-to-toe with tech civilizations. But did the newbie trial really need to throw that kind of firepower at them? Too far to use identify. But it's a safe bet this boss is all about the missile destruction, but weak in other areas. That Wu Qi, a veteran boss slayer, paused and said, Daiyu, go take out that boss. Got it. By the stone wall, Lin Daiyu, having just finished off 2 exosuit soldiers, heard Wu Qi's order. Without hesitation, she leaped up, weaving through the ranks of soldiers towards the boss. Just then, the missile launched. It was over 30 feet long, and its payload had to be enormous. As the yellow rocket plume erupted, the white missile arched through the sky towards the territory. Whoosh! That at first, it was slow, but it picked up speed fast. Soon it was supersonic, and the defense towers couldn't even track it. We can't let that thing hit the stone wall. Even if it's durable, that missile is juiced. Wu Qi's eyes narrowed, and he looked to Qin Keqing. The pretty girl nodded, gripping the Feng Yu Baojian tightly, her expression serious as she formed the thunder seal. Then, a flash of light. Just as the missile was about to strike. 6 ding sky thunder. By my command, that the power of heaven was unfathomable. At that moment, the sky exploded. 6 bolts of lightning slammed down. Asterisk crack. Crack. Crack, start, faster than the eye could see. All anyone saw was a purple flash as the missile detonated in midair. The sky ripped open, and a huge explosion cloud bloomed, engulfing hundreds of feet before dissolving. Durability -100. Durability -100. Durability -100. The shockwave rattled the stone wall, instantly shaving off a chunk of its durability. On the wall, the Mingyue Palace girls nearly lost their footing, their faces pale with shock. Is that some kind of tech weapon? Qin Keqing asked, blinking in curiosity. Wu Qi frowned. This isn't normal. The voids clearly enhanced it. Back in his previous life, he'd seen missile models and their blast radii. That launcher couldn't have created such a destructive blast. And even if it could, the missile should have vaporized the second lightning struck. No way it would have exploded. Chapter 65. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After all, that sky thunder wasn't just any lightning, it was a divine force capable of obliterating anything. Oh, Qin Keqing smiled sweetly and nodded gently. Beautiful women are always eye-catching. Just looking at her was a treat, but Wu Qi knew what mattered most, so he kept the chat with Qin Keqing brief and focused on organizing the team to clean up the battlefield. The remaining war fortresses and exoskeletons weren't numerous, cleaning them up would be quick. The drone swarms weren't much trouble either. They lacked serious combat power and could be easily mowed down by the machine gun tower. Meanwhile, Lin Daiyu approached the mechanical chariot, but this chariot was different from the previous boss. It wasn't particularly tough. Instead, light blue flames shot from beneath its chassis as it lifted, and it bolted into the fog. Simultaneously, a white missile materialized from the chariot's launcher. Sneaky, Wu Qi frowned. The mechanical chariot was incredibly fast, and with the fog cover, it was questionable whether Lin Daiyu could even catch it. They were too far from the territory for Wu Qi to intervene. The mechanical chariot fired missiles as it fled, trying to take out Lin Daiyu, but Sister Lin was agile. She was quick and dodged the missiles easily. She could leap hundreds of feet in a single bound, her movement seemingly propelled by a strong tailwind. After a chase, a figure suddenly appeared in front of the mechanical chariot. White robes framed a perfect figure, but a hint of frost touched her gentle face. Holding the wind and moon treasure mirror, she levitated into the air, ice gathering in her pursed lips. Whoosh! Suddenly, she unleashed it. A wave of frost swept out, instantly freezing a large area of ground ahead. The mechanical chariot, caught off guard, skidded uncontrollably. Lin Daiyu seized the opportunity, leaped up, her long hair flowing, looking like a descending goddess, radiating a terrifying murderous aura. At the same moment, Qin Keqing acted again. Tip, your hero, Qin Keqing, marked. Her skills were world-class. Dealing with the boss was easy now. The two heroines knew how to coordinate. The moment the mark appeared, Lin Daiyu went all out. Her figure sliced through the air, kicking up heavy turbulence as she raised her long sword. Her hairpin had been tossed aside long ago, her flowing black hair dancing in the wind, her beautiful face a mask of deadly intent. Instantly, an unseen energy surged, focused in her palm, and then channeled into her sword. Take this. Swallow the weather. Clang. The sound of a sword echoed. A ray of sword light cut hundreds of feet, sliced through the fog, and cleaved the mechanical chariot in half. Before the broken hull could even hit the ground, Qin Keqing made a thunder seal with her hand and shouted sweetly. 6 more thunderbolts struck, obliterating the remaining pieces of the chariot. Bang! The mechanical chariot was reduced to scrap metal, and the pilot inside became a pool of unidentifiable goo. It was utterly destroyed. Look, sir. Sister Daiyu and Sister Keqing took down that weird thing. Jia Yingchun had been watching the whole time. Seeing their victory, she smiled and grabbed Wu Qi's arm, shaking it. She was standing so close that Wu Qi suddenly couldn't help himself. He hugged her waist and glanced at the notification that had just popped up. Battle concluded. Starting settlement, battle settlement, enemy, 2,110 exoskeleton armored soldiers, 1,200 elite exoskeleton armored soldiers, 820 mobile war fortresses, 200 elite mobile war fortresses, 2,000 J-73 combat drones, 1,000 elite J-73 combat drones, 1 missile tank, battle rating, S. Base reward, 7,331 Void Origin Stones. Additional rewards, S level, PS, please subscribe. Chapter 7 Missile Tower. Alloy Armor. 7 out of 10. Please subscribe. Additional rewards, S level 15,000 Void Crystals, 10,000 Void Source Stones, Territory Building, Well, Territory Building, Toilet, Territory Building, Arrow Tower, Equipment, Alloy Armor. This battle went pretty well. Wu Qi wasn't fighting a standing army, he was dealing with monster waves, so, the enemies weren't overly complicated. After thinking for a moment, he turned and ordered, everyone, go down and collect the treasure chests. Yes, the warriors of Great Qin immediately jumped down. The girls responded softly and floated down one by one. They went to collect the treasure chests. The battlefield was a mess, blood, broken bodies, metal parts, total chaos. But soon, everything was consumed by the void, leaving only the kill treasure boxes. Sir, should I go help? Jia Yingchun blushed and grabbed Wu Qi's arm, feeling embarrassed. She had just been watching the whole time. Even Wu Qi, who could have just sat back and relaxed, had been working hard to direct. As Wu Qi's hero, she just watched. It's okay, it's basically automated. Wu Qi smiled. Jia Yingchun was confused, her misty eyes wide. She hesitated, not daring to argue. She just said weakly, okay. At that moment, Lin Daiyu and Qin Keqing returned. Sister Lin was covered in blood and looked embarrassed. No matter how much she loved beauty, she had ignored it during the battle, but now that it was over, she couldn't bear it. Sir, I'll go wash up first. She bowed. Wu Qi nodded and waved her over. Qin Keqing was cleaner, but after fighting for so long, she had broken a sweat and wanted to shower. Wu Qi naturally wouldn't refuse. Seeing the two sisters leave, Jia Yingchun felt uneasy, glanced timidly at Wu Qi, and whispered, "Sir, Yingchun wants to go too." "Go." Wu Qi chuckled and patted her back. The beauty trembled, nodded shyly, and hurried off the stone wall, following the two sisters. Seeing the three beauties leave, Wu Qi shook his head and began to sort out their loot. The void crystals and void source stones were put away. Chapter 66. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Right next to the water well, he put down some moon wells. Seriously, just click the plus and boom, instant moon well. Next up, the toilet situation. They only had one toilet in the territory, which was never enough. Then there was the language of roses, a fragrant toilet that the girls found a little intense. They said they sometimes got a little too into the whole experience. Now that they're getting a second one, it should help with the urgent situation. Toilet, plus. Wu Qi put the toilet next to the language of roses, then clicked on it. In a flash, a rainbow of light enveloped the little toilet. Then, just as quickly, the light faded, but instead of another language of roses, there stood a much bigger building. Public restroom, type, toilet, level, 1-0/200, available stalls, 10. Stock, 10 out of 10. Description, automatically cleans daily, consuming one inventory item. No special perks. Wu Qi couldn't hide his disappointment. He had mixed feelings about language of roses, but its special abilities were awesome. Still, 10 extra stalls isn't bad. At least the lines will be shorter. Wu Qi shrugged, pulled out the arrow tower, and plopped it down on the open space. Again, a rainbow of light flashed out and enveloped the structure, and again, in a blink, the light vanished. Wu Qi's jaw dropped at what he saw. Holy moly, a missile silo. Standing before him was a gleaming white, ultramodern building. It was a semi-elliptical structure, and inside sat a white missile that looked just like the one the mechanical tank boss had used. Missile tower, type, defense tower, level, 1-0/500, function, missile strike, level 1, range, 5,000 meters, stock, 1/1. Cooldown, 60 minutes, description, unleash the truth, one missile at a time. Digitized tech weapons. Wu Qi's eyes narrowed. Judging by the upgrade requirements, this missile tower must pack a serious punch, and the range is nothing to sneeze at either. Normally, tech weapons have insane range, but this is a standalone system, so it's good that it can actually hit something. After a moment of thought, Wu Qi instantly leveled up the missile tower to level 8. You always want your defense towers as powerful as possible. Next, he checked out the loot from the boss. Alloy armor, type, heavy armor, level, 15. Rarity, golden legend, attribute 1, armor plus 150. Attribute 2, constitution plus 75, spirit -10. Attribute 3, physical impact damage -10%, requirement, 200 constitution, description, incredible strength and defense, at the cost of some brainpower. Sweet. Wu Qi knew exactly who this was going to. Lately, the void monster invasions hadn't been too bad because of the territory's level. Even after 21 days, the monsters topped out at level 15. It seems that level 15 is the limit for newcomer trials. To make the monsters tougher, they'd probably have to rely on talents, bloodlines, or skills. For example, today's mechanical tanks could launch powerful missiles and zip around like crazy. If it weren't for the two heroes having over 500 constitution, they wouldn't have been able to stop it. A boss that knows how to kite, can you believe it? This is just the newcomer trial. Wu Qi shook his head and used small universe realm to sweep up the loot. The monster invasion on day 21 was over, and everyone could get some rest. Wu Qi gave the alloy armor to Lin Daiyu. The bulky armor looked like a half-finished exoskeleton suit, pretty ugly. Naturally, Sister Lin wasn't thrilled, but luckily, the stats kick in just by having the armor in your inventory. You don't actually have to wear it. Wu Qi then found Jia Yingchun and asked her to open the treasure chests. There were over 7,000 chests in total. Little Erku didn't dare refuse and diligently opened every one, and her 12 points of luck didn't disappoint Wu Qi. Over 7,000 chests yielded over 23,000 void crystals and over 19,000 void source stones. Plus a ton of everyday stuff like drinks, food, and clothes. But never mind those. As for special rewards, there were 31 pieces of equipment, with only 3 being trash. The rest were 20 normal, 5 green, and 3 blue. All level 15. In the early days of the newcomer trial, the more equipment the better, but since the bosses had been dropping Golden Legend loot since day 10, this stuff seemed kinda weak. Wuchi didn't bother with a closer look and just handed it out. Then the great upgrade began. First, he leveled up Sister Lin and Qin Keqing to level 8 and upgraded their skills, then he leveled up the territory to level 9, and then the defense towers, Chapter 8, the last day, 8 out of 10. Please subscribe. Time flew, days blurred together. Every day, they fought invading monsters, collected resources, and upgraded the territory, defense towers, and other buildings. The number of soldiers recruited in the territory also increased along with the level of the barracks. More and more people arrived. Day 22. The invading monsters were a horde of tide murlocs. Their fighting ability was greatly reduced since they were out of the ocean, but unlike the previous fishmen, they weren't completely defenseless. Instead, they summoned raging waves. Chapter 67. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Torrential rain came down, shifting the battlefield to the invaders' advantage and significantly weakening the flame defense towers, but the territory had more than just flame towers. The new missile towers really stepped up. Level 8 missile towers, with a 13,000-meter range and a serious punch, were knocking enemies off their feet and wiping out tidal fish left and right. Finally, a missile-resistant fishman boss showed up. A tough guy for sure, but energy wasn't his thing. A barrage of skills took him down. Day 23. Dragon-blooded barbarians attacked. These winged warriors were quick, plus, they were built tough, swimming through magma like it was nothing. Their boiling blood steamed off them. A real pain. Day 24, Day 25540, Day 30. Days ticked by, wave after wave of monsters got squashed, bosses got KO'd, and the newbie trial was winding down. The territory hit level 10 along the way. Wuchi couldn't level up past that because of realm restrictions, and the monsters topped out at level 15 too. Still, he had more than enough resources to max out all his buildings, heroes, and units at level 10. Compared to when Wuchi first dropped into the endless void, his territory was a beast, spanning 10,000 square meters, boasting towering walls, and tall defense towers, plus, a bunch of different-looking buildings inside. Night, 8:30 p.m. Inside Mirror Lake, Lin Dayu sat on the pavilion's edge, her long skirt hiked up, her pale legs dangling in the water, her hair flowed down her back, a peaceful look on her pretty face. Night was quiet, the breeze was cool. Wuchi sat beside her, a little dazed by her beauty. Neither of them spoke. Time passed. Lin suddenly turned her bright eyes to Wuchi. Is it over tonight? Yeah, it's over after tonight. Wuchi snapped back to reality, excited. 30 days. The start was easy, but he'd been fighting non-stop since, lucky to catch a few hours of sleep. More often than not, he just took a catnap before getting back in the fight. Sometimes, he'd just fall asleep. When he woke up, the battle was done. His troops fought tooth and nail for hours without waking him. Now, the 30-day rookie trial was coming to an end. His territory was about to be officially locked in and recognized by the Void. He could become a lord of all the heavens, a real player. It's about to end. The beauty frowned, a hint of sadness that tugged at Wuchi's heart. He couldn't help asking, "Why, are you unhappy?" "No." She shook her head, staring at Wuchi, and asked, "Master, tell me, if I wake up tomorrow and this whole month was just a dream?" "A dream, after crying myself to sleep." Her expression turned somber. She pulled her knees up to her chest and rested her head on them. "No way." Wuchi smiled. "It's not a dream. You, me, Keqing, Chun, this territory, those warriors, and the girls, they're all real." "Really not a dream?" "Definitely not," Wuchi answered firmly, without hesitation. The pretty girl smiled, but the smile faded, and she frowned. Young master, you know I have another name, Zhuer. Of course, with a smile, I know, that Wu Qi nodded. I don't want to be called Jier anymore. The girl shook her head, her voice gentle but firm. Okay, I'll always call you Daiyu. That Wu Qi scratched his head. He didn't get what Lin was thinking but felt something was off. Lin smiled, glancing at him and calling out softly, young master. Yeah. Master. What's up? Nothing. She chuckled. Wu Qi's face fell, and he said helplessly, don't mess with me. Sir, are you going back tonight? Lin tilted her head, hiding her face from Wu Qi, but her neck was already turning red. I guess so. That Wu Qi scratched his head. After the rookie trial ended, he usually went back immediately, otherwise, after 24 hours, the endless void would force him out. He explained the rules. Lin hummed and suddenly said, Master. Yo. Wu Qi looked at her. Lin hesitated, then said, let's leave tomorrow morning. I'll fix you a gift. Tomorrow morning? You aren't going to poison me with breakfast, are you? Wu Qi laughed, waving his hand. No, I'm not going to risk not getting back, and as a lord, it's easy for me to get into the territory. Is it okay? The beauty looked sad, her lips pursed, stunning the lake. Wu Qi couldn't take it and softened his tone. Okay, I'll do whatever you want. At worst, you can poison me to death, okay? Okay. The beauty smiled, getting up and walking away. This girl. Wu Qi was confused. He couldn't understand what was up with Lin today, but he didn't dwell on it. Just a few more hours, and the rookie trial was over. Then he'd have all the freedom in the world, and life wouldn't be so intense. Hum, hum, hum. Wu Qi hummed a tune, walked out of the lake, and strolled around the territory. The territory was pretty lively at the moment. People were coming and going in each building, all beauties, each stunning in their own way. They say no two leaves are alike, and the same goes for people, and the same went for these women, each unique, some pure, some aloof, some seductive, some were even pure and seductive, driving you crazy with the contrast. Chapter 68. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. 100 elite Qin warriors, 100 immortal cultivators, plus our 3 heroes. Before I knew it, the territory already had over 200 residents. Wu Qi surveyed the scene, a feeling of satisfaction washing over him. Level restrictions actually had their perks, keeping things from getting too crazy too fast. Every unit had been upgraded to level 10, the Qin warriors were absolute beasts, and their formations unlocked some seriously cool new skills. The Mingyue Palace girls picked up an extra sealing technique, making them even more formidable. After a bit more exploring, Wu Qi ended up at the wall. Chapter 9, I've got 9 knives, September 10th. Please subscribe. Next to the imposing wall, defense towers stood as silent guardians. Day 30 had arrived. Wu Qi had built 40 defense towers, and each one was maxed out at level 10. These towers were the MVPs of every monster invasion. Sure, Lin Daiyu and Qin Keqing were top-tier combatants, but most of the time, it was the defense towers holding back the monster hordes, especially with that. Let's just say the towers were indispensable, otherwise, Wu Qi wouldn't have made them his top upgrade priority. These 40 towers practically formed a ring around the 4 walls, leaving only the gates open. Specifically, there were 22 statue towers like the Stinky Fart Tower, Crossbow Tower, Sword Chi Tower, and Jin Gang Tower, .16 Elemental Towers, Fire Judgment Tower, Fire Explosion Tower, Frost Spell Tower, and so on, and the last 2 slots were filled by the more unique, Missile Tower, and Virus Tower. He'd snagged the Virus Tower during the monster invasion on day 27. Those monsters were a plague of virus types, scary strong, their whole deal was viruses, super contagious and parasitic. Luckily, Wu Qi had picked up the Purification Tower, a couple of days prior, keeping his soldiers safe. Otherwise, he might have had to wipe them all out. The level 10, Virus Tower, like the Missile Tower, was a seriously nasty offensive building. The virus it unleashed could infect tons of targets, turning them against their own side and making them one of us. And get this, that it could cause some pretty wild mutations. Heading up to the wall, that he saw 25 Qin warriors and 25 Mingyue palace girls on each side. They all saluted as soon as they spotted him. "Your Majesty!" Exalted Immortal, that the cool and collected warriors bowed, while the cute and energetic girls offered a blessing. They were still sticking with those titles. Wu Qi had tried to get them to call him young master or lord, to keep things consistent, but after a few attempts, they just went back to King and Shangxian. In their eyes, he was just that perfect, embodying their ideal leader. Wu Qi found it pretty amusing, so he stopped trying to change it. At ease, just taking a look around, that Wu Qi waved it off, and the girls went back to their guard duty. Wu Qi strolled along the wall, checking the time. It was already 10 p.m. 2 more hours. Where are the monsters? That Wu Qi frowned. Something felt off. Sure, the boss showing up late was whatever, he's the boss, he can get a pass, but usually, the basic mobs swarmed early, right? Sometimes, it was a non-stop, 24/7 onslaught, with waves hitting at random. Other times, they'd kite you, hit and run until they could come back with bigger numbers. You saw all kinds of weird tactics. These monsters could be surprisingly cunning. TSK. Now I'm worried. Wu Qi took a deep breath and started thinking it through. He leaned against the inner wall, looking out, and started chatting with a Qin warrior beside him. She was a legit tall drink of water, around 5 feet 10 inches, sporting a single ponytail. Her black bird hair ornament swayed in the breeze, giving off a mysterious vibe. Her cold, pretty face was all business, radiating intensity like a weapon. Her eyes darted around, constantly scanning the surroundings. Of course, she knew Wu Qi was there. She had a great figure, all curves and proportions, and she filled out her dark black outfit nicely. The bronze armor couldn't hide that fiery body. "What's your name?" Wu Qi asked. The tall warrior turned and answered respectfully, "Your Majesty, this humble servant is Zhao Heihe." "Zhao Heihe? That doesn't really fit you, does it?" Wu Qi was taken aback. What kind of parent names their daughter Black River? Zhao Heihe kept her composure and explained, "My humble parents conceived me by the river on a dark night, so they named me Heihe. That's real casual." Wu Qi rubbed his forehead, thought for a second, and then asked, "Mind if I rename you?" "The king's will is my command." A hint of excitement flashed across the tall warrior's face. Being renamed by the king was a great honor. Wu Qi hesitated, then smiled and said, "Shang He from Qin, since you were called Heihe before, and it sounds like it has to do with the dark night and bright moon, how about Zhao Xuanhuan?" "Thank you, Your Majesty." The beauty smiled and accepted without a second thought. Truth be told, she wasn't even sure what the name meant. But if Wu Qi gave it to her, she'd rock it even if he'd named her Zhao Gooden, dog egg. "Xuanhuan, check it out." Wu Qi was about to strike up a conversation. Suddenly, Zhao Xuanhuan furrowed her brow, her pretty face hardening with deadly intent. "Danger!" "Huh!" Wu Qi was startled, snapped back to reality, and looked outside. Monsters incoming? But, it was still pitch black out there, and the fog was calm as ever. Wu Qi didn't think the Qin warriors were messing around, so he asked, "What did you find?" "Your Majesty, I sense a trace of hostility, a very dangerous one. It's making me tremble all over." "Oh, give me flowers." "Your Majesty. I feel it too." "Yeah, Your Majesty. The hostility is really strong." The others chimed in. Even the Mingyue palace girls sensed something was up. More or less, they were all top-notch soldiers after all, level 10, and with the tenfold bonus from the territory buff, their senses were razor-sharp. They were rarely wrong. Invisible? Or some long-range attacker? Hidden in the fog, Wu Qi's mind raced. He scanned the sky, and peered into the depths of the fog. Chapter 69. You are listening at novelfull.audio. His brow furrowed. Just then, 3 figures appeared, leaping quickly to Wu Qi's side. It was Jia Yingchun, supported by Lin Daiyu, her pretty face pale with anxiety. They'd obviously sensed something was wrong. What's going on? Why haven't they attacked yet? Wu Qi thought for a moment and decided to set a few traps. He began controlling the defense towers, blanketing the area with stinky fart towers, and more mines, green mist, ground vines, big pineapple bombs. The other towers were ready to unleash hell. The moment the monsters moved, he'd hit them hard. But, something weird was happening. It was 11 p.m., and still no monsters. Wu Qi was stumped. Could it be, were the monsters too scared to attack? Nah, the newcomer trial monsters were controlled by the void. They had to attack. 10 more minutes ticked by. 11:10, still nothing. 11:20, still nothing. 11:30, still nothing. Only 10 minutes left. Wu Qi was baffled. Everything was quiet. The last 5 minutes, the last 3 minutes, last minute. Last 30 seconds. Last 20 seconds. Last 10 seconds. Suddenly, time slowed down. A figure emerged from the mist. A bearded man in a bamboo hat, wielding a knife, his face grim, he stared at Wu Qi, his voice traveling across the distance to him. I have 9 blades. Care to sample them? Chapter 10, 9 Ultimate Swords. Trial over. I have 9 blades. Figures emerged from the mist, pacing closer, each step measured in slow motion. Time slowed, almost stopped. The man in the bamboo hat and grey clothes had a long knife at his waist. His bearded face was indifferent. He locked eyes with Wu Qi, ignoring the walls, the defense towers, the heroes, everything. It was as if the world had vanished, leaving only Wu Qi. This wasn't some poetic moment. This was terrifying. A huge crisis. His voice traveled, faint but clear, to Wu Qi's ears. Care to sample them? He walked towards Wu Qi, drawing his long knife. First blade, cut the wind and rain. He slashed, the sword flashed, cutting through the traps and the green mist, clearing a path. He stepped into it, gripping his knife. Wu Qi was frozen, unable to move. A mysterious, terrifying pressure had stopped time, freezing everyone in place. Wind, fog, time. He couldn't speak, could only watch the man approach. Move. Move. Wu Qi screamed in his mind, but nothing happened. The only thing he felt was the Lord's heart. He could quit, abandon the trial, and return to Earth. But, there were only 10 seconds left. Was he really going to give up? Second blade. The man's voice was cold. Behead sin and evil. He slashed. The sword ripped through the earth, leaving a crack in its wake. It extended to the wall. Third blade. Cut mountains and rivers. The wall shattered. Fourth blade. Behead the living and the dead. The warriors of Great Qin fell. Fifth blade. Kill ghosts and gods. The girls from Mingyue Palace died. Sixth blade. Death of fate. Point 40 defense towers crumbled to dust. Seventh blade. Cut the heaven and the earth. The territory was split in two, buildings collapsing everywhere, the earth cracked, the fissures stretching for miles. Chapter 70. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Seventh Sword. Star Splitter. He advanced, step by deliberate step, slicing through the wind and rain, cleaving sins and misfortunes in two, shredding mountains and rivers with 3 strikes. By the 6th, nearly half the territory was leveled. Wu Qi watched it all, eyes bloodshot, heart pounding like a drum, pure rage coursed through him, blood boiling. Then, the 7th blade descended on Lin Daiyu. Immobilized, she locked eyes with Wu Qi, her beautiful gaze filled with unspoken pleas, words he couldn't hear. Behind her, the sword's light was merciless. It was coming, she was about to die. Move. Just move. Wu Qi's mind raced, his body fighting to break free. But time stood still. Even heroes with thousands of stats were frozen, let alone him. Between his anger and despair, a strange calm washed over Wu Qi. An idea sparked in his mind. Its sword intent. Across the myriad worlds, the infinite universe, power systems vary, but all, without exception, hinge on body, soul, mind, and will. The first 2 are about physicality and spirit. The direct measure of raw power, the latter 2. Far more complex. This swordsman was wielding some kind of sword intent, an upgraded void-like power that even froze time itself, 9 strikes to destroy everything. And this sword intent, to break free, even for a tenth of a second, it would take all of his heart and willpower. Focus. Wu Qi's eyes burned, his heart aching, he watched the blade fall, saw the edge touch Lin Dayu's head. Get out of the way. Wu Qi's mind went blank, emptied of all thought, all strategy, only pure, unadulterated obsession remained. Move. In that instant, time seemed to crack open, Lin Dayu regained a tenth of a second, she smiled at Wu Qi, channeling every last ounce of her strength, going all in. She sacrificed her vitality, her lifespan, everything, focusing it into a single point. Then, she moved. A single, fluid motion, dodging the blow like a swimming dragon, leaping hundreds of feet into the air, lunging towards the swordsman. Halfway there, her hair turned bone white, her youthful body withered, aging her 50 years in an instant. Clang! The sword's light shattered the day. The eighth. The swordsman droned on, but his words were cut short as a long sword pierced through his chest. His eyes widened, blood erupted, he couldn't finish the sentence, thud. The long knife clattered to the ground, the swordsman's pupils dilated, his body weakened, he dropped to his knees, then collapsed. Still, not strong enough. With a sigh, the swordsman breathed his last, eyes still open, and then, time resumed. Wu Qi gasped for breath, Qin Keqing was trembling, tears streaming down her face, Jia Yingchun stared, her eyes wide with horror, everywhere around them, total destruction. The battle's over. Initiating settlement. Battle settlement. Enemies. 1. 9 Ju Sword Chen Hao, rating, SSS, base reward, 1 Void Source Stone, 1 Legendary Title, bonus rewards, SSS rating 50,000 Void Crystals, 50,000 Void Source Stones, 10 free attribute points, Territory Building, Tavern, Territory Building, Barracks, Territory Expansion Order, usable within 24 hours. It's over. Wu Qi surveyed the scene, forcing a wry smile, he shook his head, scanning the ruined territory, seeing the buildings reduced to rubble. Thankfully, the Hall of Valor was spared, it had survived. Wu Qi immediately began the resurrection process. Hall of Valor, details omitted, level, 10, Q, 10, hero resurrection time, 24 hours, troop resurrection time, 1 hour, resurrecting. The level 10 Hall of Valor boasted 10 resurrection queues. Wu Qi didn't hesitate, immediately resurrecting 10 fallen soldiers. It would take approximately 10 hours to bring everyone back. At the same time, he looked around, reluctantly beginning the repair work, walls, defense towers, all the various buildings. That swordsman, he was a straight-up demolition machine. 5.2 Totally insane. Bang, bang, bang. Soon, the sounds of hammers echoed through the territory as the rebuilding began. Wu Qi leaned against some ruins, taking a deep breath. Just then, an ethereal message, genderless, a blend of voice and thought, resonated in Wu Qi's mind. You have successfully completed the newbie trial. Your void reward will be delivered shortly. You have a maximum of 24 hours remaining in the endless void. The newbie trial was over. The endless void had notified him that he could return at any time. And, honestly, it was time, everything was done, he'd survived the 30 days and earned the top reward.